Welcome to the Mindfully Masculine podcast with Charles and Dan, where we take a conscious, holistic, and direct approach to relationships, mental health, and self-improvement. For additional content, visit our website at mindfullymasculine.com. And to interact with us, our guests, and your fellow listeners, join the Mindfully Masculine group on Facebook.
Good morning, Charles.
Good morning, Dan. How are you?
I'm good, but I think my eyes are deceiving me a little bit. It looks like you're not in the camper today.
I am not in my camper. I am living in the lap of luxury at the Hilton down by Bonnet Creek, which is in Disney World. I came down here for a teeny tiny, itsy bitsy one night getaway. And so I am taking time out of that to record all this valuable information for our loyal listeners. Yeah, it's the big sacrifices that matter. How are you this morning?
I'm good. I love the way you kind of put your finger to your forehead when you said,
I'm a public intellectual now.
Record all this valuable information. Yeah, clearly.
Yeah, I consider myself a public intellectual. I'm going to put that on our when we print our business cards. That's what I'm going to put for my title.
Public intellectual.
Public intellectual. I think that'd be so blowhardy. I just thought of that, and I'm really committed. So sorry about that.
Don't never need to apologize to me.
If it makes you feel better, you can compensate by putting something funny like federal body inspector or something.
Oh,
something,
that's
something witty.
Yeah. Something
real highbrow stuff.
Something I can pull from a t-shirt shop here in Florida. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I go down on 192 for inspiration if you'd like.
Oh, that's a great idea. We'll do some research.
Yeah, exactly.
Expense it, business expense, clearly.
So I had a way better Friday night than you did. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah. So all right. Yeah. I guess we'll start by setting the bar really low. I was totally planning on going out and meeting you guys for sushi as regularly I do. And turns out I kind of botched a couple of things for my current client. I'm not gonna blame anything other than the fact that it's been starting and stopping for and this project had stopped for about 3 or 4 months while we waited for the legal team to do their due diligence and their research on stuff. And so there are a lot of moving parts, and I kind of lost track of a couple of them, and I made a mistake, and I migrated data to a spot that can't really get undone. And I need to have an uncomfortable conversation with a client this week. And hopefully, the good news is that it's less data than I originally thought. And it's less of an impact than I originally thought. But I was kind of freaking out. So I canceled my Friday evening plans to start cleaning things up and, getting my arms around the problem before I let my mind race out of control. Like it did that on its own.
Yeah.
And then, but the problem was, I'm not at the point in my brain control to say, I'm going to be able to go out and have a good time with you guys.
Right.
And have this running in the back of my mind and really until I get my arms around it. So I knew that in order for me to relax and be, my normal charming self around you guys
naturally.
I was going to need to get a better idea of the scope of the problem. And so, unfortunately I had to cancel plans as much as I wanted to be there and sit at home and kind of work things out on a Friday night. However, that turned out to be good because I'm in the middle of the Way Better Run 5K challenge. I needed to run 3 miles on Saturday and already had a very booked Saturday with, home improvement and a date and everything else like that. So it was good that actually I stayed home. I went to bed at a normal hour. I got my arms around the problem. And then Saturday, I was able to get a 3 mile run in the heat in the middle of the day before going over to the Pet Alliance of Orlando, where I became an official bark buddy. So I was
how was that?
That was great. I was super excited because it's not just scooping up poop and stocking shelves. That's exactly what I thought.
Right.
When I was in college, I was a pre-vet major for one full semester.
Okay.
And I transferred in about 3 or 4 weeks after the semester had started. And the problem was every pre-vet major needed to take this animal practicum. And I went to a college in New Jersey, and basically they had all these different. It was a farm. It was basically a agricultural school in New Jersey. And they had, horses and pigs and sheep and cows and, where you go and you work, and they provided some of the food for the local prison system and stuff. So it was, it was cool. So, but every pre-vet major needed to go and choose one of these animals. And the only thing left was the dairy cattle practicum, which started at 5 a.m. on the farm that you had to walk over to. It was like a half-hour walk from where I lived, twice a week. And you basically were there for 3 hours, and it was literally shoveling. I mean, like snow shovel full of poop, and clean the teats, clean the colostrum, clean, with iodine and everything. So I lasted a full 2 weeks doing that. And then I was
a long 2 weeks.
Yeah, man, at 5 a.m. for a college kid. So that's what I thought I'd be doing as a bark buddy. But I'm like, you know what? I love dogs. I want to help out whatever I can. That's fine. It's a couple hours a week. Turns out we are actually supposed to be walking the dogs, playing with the dogs, doing enrichment exercises with dogs, like
nice
mind games and playing with them. And then we have to adopt them or help them get adopted by people coming into the shelter. So we get to know them, know the dog, whether they like children, whether they like, other animals. And then we kind of have to match them to the people who are trying to adopt them. So we become actually kind of little salesmen for these dogs to help them get adopted. And so I was like, this is fantastic. Yeah. Okay. You have to scoop up some poop once in a while, but that's not my primary job. So I was excited about that. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So enough about me. Yeah.
No, I've got some advice. What you should really do is try to defeat the other volunteers and getting the dogs you work with adopted the fastest.
Oh, that's a great competition. Yes.
Yeah. Go on eBay and buy like some cheap dog costumes and stuff and dress them up and take pictures of them.
Put little bows on them. Oh yeah. They love
exactly.
that. Yeah. Oh, that's a great idea. I was surprised. They have so many. It was nice to see how many people have donated so much to that one shelter.
Yeah.
I mean, it was food and crates, everything. It was overflowing out of the shelter, and people were like putting that stuff away.
That's great.
So it was nice. And it's a no-kill. And so there's no space limit or no time limit for an animal to be there. And so they don't take strays. They only take in, dogs that were previously, owned in homes that people gave them up, but they will take the overflow from some of the other shelters where they pick up strays and things like that. And there's a whole nother section for that. And so that was kind of cool. I feel good about that,
That's awesome. I'm glad you got to do that. Glad you enjoyed it. I was scheduled to do my kitty cuddler.
I know. And this is, I got to give you credit. This was your idea. You were talking about doing the kitty cuddler first. And that's what made me think, okay, I want to, I definitely want to get involved too.
Well,
so
thank
you for giving me that idea. By the way.
And just like the 5K trainer, I got you to do it. And then I didn't do it myself.
That's okay, man. You know what? You're great at coming up with some awesome ideas, but you're one person, and one of my criticisms for you is you get a little overly ambitious with stuff, but you do pick great things to do, and so I benefit from that for sure. And then I had a good excuse. I had a good excuse to miss my orientation, though. I had a doctor's appointment beforehand, and he wanted to ask me a bunch more questions about my health and blah, 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 make sure I don't die, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
And so it just took too long, and I didn't get to go to my orientation, but I'll schedule another one.
Yeah, I think, the people there with all the volunteers, stuff like that, everybody really, really kind, loving people, and
you got to be in that business, right?
You don't have to be anything.
I guess you don't have to be.
No, you could be complete jerks sometimes, but
it's
nice when they're not.
Yes, for sure.
I try to just appreciate it when that doesn't come out. Yeah. So.
All right. So here's what we did without you Friday night.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Please let. I'm going to open the wound so you can put a little more salt in it.
Happy to do so.
Yeah.
So I met Kurt and Richard at Shikai, and we had some happy hour sushi. Then we went over to Mather's for a couple rounds over there, and hammering the club soda like a straight up boss.
Yeah.
And then after those guys were drunk and I was sober, it's like, okay, it's time for me to take over the evening now because I still have my wits about me.
What can I do with these two? Right.
Exactly.
I got it. Yeah.
And I said, what I think you guys want to do is head down to the Disney boardwalk so we can go check out Jelly Rolls, the dueling piano bar, and then Atlantic Dance Hall and see what the vibe's like down there. And so we all piled in my tiny little Yaris.
And they agreed.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. So
they made lots of complimentary statements about how roomy it is inside.
Oh, really? Wow. They must have been really drunk.
They were hammered.
You were such a I'm going to call you the twin whisperer from now on. Really?
I don't want that title. I do not want that title. So we went down to Jelly Rolls first, which was pretty great. It was getting kind of crowded, but we were able to find seats, and it was $15 a person, which surprised me a little bit.
What time did you get there?
Oh, good question. I want to say 8:15, 8:30.
Okay. So, I do, because I love a dueling piano, and
I do too.
Yeah, I just want to make sure if I go, I can get a seat.
Yeah, it definitely does pay to go early-ish, and I would say if you go early-ish enough and you get a seat on the front row, if you're there with a date, I saw a couple fellas stand up, grab their lady, and do a little dancing.
There's room to do a little dancing.
Yeah.
And what kind of dancing was being done?
Good question.
Dancing it was that we can do.
I mean, dancing that anybody with a neuromuscular disorder could do. It was pretty all over. So it was all over the place. It was I'm not one to look down my nose at anybody who's willing to get up there and flail around, because I'm certainly not. But
you got to get in the ring. Yeah, Brene Brown, and
exactly.
Yeah. Was it Roosevelt?
Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt said it, and these people were willing to get down there and mix it up.
That's great.
That's one of the things whenever I tell Victoria about going someplace and seeing some civilians dancing. Her two questions are, was he doing any turns? And I was like, yeah, I believe he was. And then her second question is, did it look like he was going to rip her arm out of the socket? I was like, as a matter of fact, it did.
My teacher Nanette says the same thing. Almost every class is, a lot of times if you're not conscious and you don't practice, it's very easy to rip a girl's arm out of the socket or yanking them around.
It's crazy,
especially so much in hustle. I mean, I'm not in swing, maybe not so much, but hustle, you're constantly moving back and forth. So it's real easy to just continue to get further and further apart. And then before you know it, you've got whiplash and dislocated shoulders on both ends.
I've seen some folks going at the dancing, and I saw a couple of Mathers a week or two ago doing it, and it was this guy was whipping her around. I was concerned.
Yeah.
Yep. But anyway, so then we went to the dance hall and did a fair amount of standing around with more club soda, and a lot of 90s and 2000s hip hop, which I've not gotten to that class yet, so I don't know what to do other than stand around disapprovingly of the other people. And I managed that. Okay. Yeah. And then it got late. I want to say probably 11:30 we left, and I drove the gents back to their cars and headed home and turned in. No, hey man, that's great. I know we when we went to rent the boat, we walked by there, and I was curious to see if they were open again. And I'm glad you guys went to check that out. That's fantastic. Yeah, when we left the dance hall at 11:30, it was still pretty empty. There were not many people there. Oh wow. So I don't know if people know that they're open again, or if, just depending on what kind of week it is in the parks, there's a lot of families with kids for spring break and stuff. So maybe that was why, but yeah, it wasn't too crowded at all. Yeah. Well, hey, which I loved, obviously. If the music was also a little quieter, it would have been perfect.
I think you just need to open up your own place and just call it Soda, and then you've got Club Soda, right?
Orlando's hottest dance club is called Decibel because all the music's at 1 decibel. Here's your DJ Charles. Oh, that'd be perfect.
Oh, it'd be like the SNL skit, right?
Yes, exactly.
Delicious Dish.
Oh no,
with Alec Baldwin. Do you remember?
Yes.
Yeah, sweaty. Yeah, he had pizza sweaty balls, and yeah.
That nice soft, calm voice.
Was that on NPR?
I believe it was.
Was that NPR? Okay,
yes, that was NPR.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna have to do the whole podcast this way.
We should do exactly that. I could definitely pull that off.
Oh my God, this would be great.
That'd be fun. Okay, so maybe the first one that we do in person, you and I can sit side by side and do it exactly like that.
Oh yes. You think Baldwin's available?
Haven't heard much about him lately. I don't know what he's up to. Maybe. Okay. Anything else to report before we jump in?
Yeah, actually, I decided last minute to sign up for another dance class this week. I'm on Tuesdays. I'll be going to a new venue to do a beginner's hustle class for 8 weeks.
You're doing another beginner hustle class?
I am.
Good for you. Yeah, I respect that.
I am. So
you're gonna be. Yeah, you're going to be like Billy Madison playing dodgeball with the kids in first grade.
Oh, I can't wait. But we've got rumba tonight.
We do have rumba tonight.
In case you didn't mention that. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Make sure, we're there. It's
going to be fun.
Myself, so I'm excited.
Looking forward to cutting a rug.
I'm looking forward to seeing your skills. I mean, you've been taking classes for a while.
Victoria and I have been doing rumba, not an insignificant number of sessions, and so. Hopefully when we spend an hour doing the basic step all night, I'll be able to roll with whatever rookie they pair me with.
Right. There you go. Speaking of Billy Madison. So
exactly. All right. Well, congratulations on hitting another hustle class. I know you love taking that hustle class.
I do, but you know what? It kind of puts it into a different part of my brain in terms of memory. So the more often I can do it, and it is so much more economical to the group lesson than a private. Private is, for me, it's like $85 an hour with Nanette, and then a group lesson of 8 weeks of an hour each is 95. So or 90, 97, something like that. So it's and
great. There are definitely things you get from a group lesson that you can't get from a private lesson, which is, when I'm dancing with Victoria, I'm dancing with an expert. So even when I mess up, she can make me look good.
Right. Yeah. And you don't realize how much you mess up because when you're dancing with somebody else, you really are isolating yourself from them in terms of
you're the constant.
It's very easy to see, where, the boundaries of where you need to improve when you don't have somebody there to correct you or to ignore what you did and continue to do something. So you could indicate to do something differently. Instead of pulling, when you want to turn somebody to the outside, you pull them this way or the inside is that way. So, you could be moving your hand just a slightly wrong direction. And then you'll see the reaction. You'd see the reaction from somebody who doesn't know what they're doing versus an instructor is going to go the right way both times, So, it's
right. And that's the goal to being a good leader in a ballroom dance is you have to be able to dance with somebody who's not as experienced as you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a skill. I don't know that I've really been learning that well in my privates, but I'm looking forward to my first group class tonight. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
And we're wearing Hawaiian shirts tonight, right?
Oh, thank you for reminding me. Yes, we will. Yes, I will. My brand new. I got it. Yeah, that was another big thing. I got my first Hawaiian shirt.
I can't believe that. I can't believe that when we started hanging out, no Hawaiian shirts and tons of cargo shorts, and I've changed all that.
Yeah, I have to say I'm grateful. Yeah, I like it's fun.
You're grateful. I had to look at you.
So yes, yeah. I guess your eyes are thankful. I get it.
Absolutely.
But this is kind of a good transition, talking about like leading when it comes to dance into this chapter here, right? So it's what is this, Rule 9?
It is,
and it's assume that the person you're listening to might know something you don't. And in the chapter, he talks about like the interactions with psychologists and a lot of their patients,
Right.
and people in general. But one of the overarching themes is that people need to get along with each other so you can hang out with other people, so you can get some feedback about what you're saying. And different psychologists have different ways of doing that. For example, Freud would not ever look at the patient when he was seeing them, because he didn't want to influence what they were saying by giving them feedback. And then Peterson says he does the opposite. He actually sits there and he will, he tries to not make expressions, but does a little bit and does give a little bit of feedback. But the same thing with dancing is, if you need to know what you're saying and kind of put things in perspective and get that feedback. So I think, like you just said, from somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, you're going to get some immediate feedback. I think that's going to be a little bit more honest.
Oh, for sure.
Somebody who is so well versed. Like the instructors, they're fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but they are so trained, and it is so part of their normal muscle memory to move a certain way.
Right.
When they hear a certain thing, or when right after they do a certain move, that we're not getting as much honest feedback. Right.
Yes, for sure.
So, I kind of just, drew those two conclusions there.
I like it. Yeah. Sometimes when I'm dancing with Victoria, I will put my arm up a little late for her to do an outside turn, and she'll just catch up.
Yes.
And then after the move is completely executed, she'll be like, "You were a little late on that one." I was like, "Are you sure?"
Right.
Like,
yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And it's really, and the same thing happens to me. And I'm just like, wait a minute. It didn't feel wrong at all.
Right. Exactly.
And it's because you didn't make me, it didn't, I didn't get any reaction, any response. So, I like the fact that, Peterson talks about while he tries to not influence what people are saying when they're talking to him in their therapy sessions, he does come in with the intention of that he wants the best for them.
Right.
And he talks about a lot of psychiatrists will influence their patients because with their, sometimes their political ideologies, and whether they're conservative or a little bit more liberal on certain areas. And I thought that was interesting. I never really thought about how much a psychiatrist actually will potentially could influence people's memories about themselves and what actually happened. Do you remember? That part Yeah. I just, where, the patient was saying, she thought she may have been raped, and then it turns out, well, she was drunk, so she's not sure if she was raped. And so he's like, well, if I was leaning one way, I would say, okay, this is not a situation you should have been in. And then if I was leaning another way, it should have been like, well, none of these guys should have even, had sex with you because you were drunk. And so, it's because, when alcohol is involved and the nature of our memory isn't, an exact recount of what happened, it is, basically our memory is there to help us learn, and moving and remember and move forward. A psychiatrist can really influence, and, by asking certain questions and saying certain things, they can really influence the way people remember things, and then how they actually go out and live their lives. It's crazy. I remember when we interviewed my dad, he had talked about what an awesome responsibility it is to be a psychiatrist. And then this section in this chapter kind of made me realize, wow, it brought it home. And I really realized, psychiatrists have quite a bit of power over people.
Yeah. And I think it really is important, that you feel comfortable with your therapist and that you believe them to be an ethical person, right? And that you don't feel like they have any kind of political, social, even religious agenda that they're more dedicated to than trying to help you meet your goals, whatever those goals for good mental health happen to be. Because they are in a position to definitely just tweak some levers a little bit and get you to do what they want you to do if they're the kind of person to do that.
So let me dig in, and you obviously don't have to answer this, but do you feel like Renata has ever, kind of led you one way or another, where you're kind of like, I don't necessarily know that this is accurate for me, or it doesn't feel true for me.
I see what you're saying. And I would say, I've never had a therapy session with Rob, obviously, because he's my buddy, but I would say Renata and Rob both focus more on, when I report what I'm thinking or what I'm doing, the question is, do you feel that this is going to get you closer to your goals or further from your goals? This behavior.
Great question. Great question.
It's more about asking me to sort of investigate and interrogate my motivations, and do I still have the same stated goals that I had before? Have my goals changed? And what kind of actions am I taking? And is it possible they're moving me in the opposite direction? And often I have to say, well, yes, they are. And I need to knock it off.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. No, I'm glad that sounds like the right way to go about a therapy session. And this is coming from somebody who's never been to therapy and is not a therapist. So, but
I know I'm working on you though. I'm going to peer pressure you into getting some therapy.
Well, what's interesting is I came to my dad the other night. We do a weekly FaceTime call together, and every once in a while it kind of turns into a therapy session. So I benefit out of him being a therapist for sure. And he helped me walked me through, some things I was struggling with and thinking through. And he definitely put on his therapist hat instead of his father hat. And I could tell, and it was interesting. He, because I did most of the talking, and he asked a couple of questions and just was quiet. So I get a little bit of therapy. I mean, it's not a formal process. It probably wouldn't meet your standards, but
I'm rolling my eyes so hard right now.
I get a little bit. Yeah. I get a little bit for free.
You look at that way more as therapy than your dad does. If we had the conversation with your dad right now, do you feel like you're putting your therapy hat on with Dan? The answer would be like, no, absolutely not. He's my son. Of course I'm not doing that.
Actually, but we actually talked about it the last time. It doesn't happen maybe as often as I think it does. But the last time he actually did say, he's like, yeah, I'm glad I can, because I thanked him. I felt like it was a therapy because maybe
you just have the privilege of talking to a wise man. That's part of it too.
Definitely not. No.
I'm going to tell him you said that. All right. I've got so one of the videos I watched, a lecture video of Dr. Peterson talking about this rule, the really cool way he described it, he said, this rule is about conversation, humility, and listening. And there's a story I want to tell you that I don't think I've discussed with you before, but I really like it. And I think you'll find it interesting.
Okay.
So back in the late 1800s, the prime minister of Britain was a guy named Benjamin Disraeli. And if you want some really interesting, clever motivational quotes, just Google Benjamin Disraeli. He's got he said a lot of really cool stuff.
Interesting.
And so when he was running for prime minister, his rival was a guy named William Gladstone. And they both had a date with the same woman on different nights. And so after the same woman went out with both candidates running for prime minister, the press asked her to share what she thought of the two men. And here's what she said. And I love this. She said, when I left the dining room after sitting across from Mr. Gladstone, I thought he was the cleverest man in England. But after sitting next to Mr. Disraeli, I thought I was the cleverest woman in England. And that reminded me of so much in this chapter about the idea of, no, it's the active listener that makes people feel good about the conversation, not the active speaker.
For sure.
And that's something that obviously, as somebody who started a podcast and thinks people want to / need to hear what I say, obviously I place a higher premium on my words than some other folks do. And, is that justified? Not for me to say.
Oh, that's great.
This is a hard rule to live, though. I definitely have some difficulty with this because, I have gone into many conversations under the assumption that I had a more comprehensive knowledge and opinion of whatever the topic was we were discussing, and that the other person, that other poor sap, was just going to spin their wheels and talk for a while. But either they were going to start seeing things my way or they were going to continue to dwell in ignorance.
Right.
And that is not the way to enter into a conversation and leave with something new.
So what do you think changed, or what happened to make you change your mind about that in your own life?
As you get older and you have more experiences that I would say turn out negative, and you recognize that they're of your own making, it does give you a little bit of humility to realize, okay, so clearly I don't know everything. Mm-hmm. Another thing that Peterson talks about when it comes to having discussions or arguments or debates with people, he says one of the worst positions you could ever be in is being someone who wins an argument even though you're wrong.
Right. Yeah.
So the idea of, I'm a good arguer, I'm a good debater, so I'm able to club somebody else with my arguing skills and feel like I came out of the argument the winner, when in reality, I continue believing the wrong thing and defending the wrong position. And now I made this other person who may have been right about their position, they're doubting themselves now. And that's terrible for both of us.
It really is. I went through that with one of my good friends, and he's still a good friend. But in high school, he was like a debate team or whatever. And the thing was, he brought that into our friendship. And a lot of times, like he would do it. He would use exactly that skill set to just debate. And he was clearly wrong, and we all knew it, and we both knew it. And there's a group of us, whatever. And he would just continue to, push forward with his view and get ridiculous with it, to the point of where it really was just a way to stop the other person from talking. And then at some point, you just be like, give up and be like, okay, you're right. And there'd be no, because at that point, right, it was basically, like a Ferrari racing a Hyundai. And I was in the Hyundai because I didn't have like all these debate skills, but I knew on the principle that I was right. He knew it was, but he didn't want to lose. It wasn't about coming to a conclusion. It wasn't about fixing a problem. It wasn't about having a healthy argument. It was, he just didn't want to lose. At that point, he also lost my friendship. He lost my respect. Right. Yeah. And fortunately, it was for a little, it was for brief periods of time. And then as we got older, that happened less and less. He got a little bit more, and we all learn, we all become better people, I think, for the most part, as we get older. And that's changed. But I just remember, I got a point to where I was like, I don't even want to have a conversation about anything serious with you, because I knew you were just going to have to be right and just beat me down with your, the skill set, the technical skill set that you have for being in debate team. And I was just like, that sounds exhausting. That sounds exhausting. And I feel terrible for how many times I've done that to people. And not just people on a debate club stage, like people I actually love and care about, where I've just, grabbed onto this need to be right. Yeah.
And that's another thing that Peterson says. It's like when you defeat your spouse or your girlfriend in an argument, then, you leave the argument and you're a winner and they're a loser. And so you're spending your time with somebody who feels like a loser. And that's awful.
Is that what you want? Right now, you're supposed to write that. What is the saying? You should be spending, the 6 people that you're closest with will reflect, kind of your values and where you're at. Exactly. So now you're bringing down the people you spend the most time with. What's that going to do? That's going to have a negative effect of you down the road at some point too.
Absolutely.
If you're now bringing down the whole, all the people that you're close to.
Yeah. One of the points I really liked,
bring them up and bring yourself up.
Exactly. One of the points I really liked in this chapter was the idea that, if you're willing to humble yourself a little bit and really pay attention to and listen to someone tell their story, and it doesn't have to be like a formal biography of their life, but just, sharing their experiences, sharing what their life's about, it's very possible that you'll hear them talk about a mistake they made and you'll be able to learn from it without having to go through it yourself.
That's great.
And I mean, that's pretty much what we're trying to do with this podcast, right? The idea that we can share stuff with people and maybe they can learn from our stories so they don't have to repeat our mistakes.
110%.
I like it.
I almost said 100%. So I'm trying to spin it up a little bit. Yeah.
The other way that Peterson described humility, which I really enjoyed, was he said humility is the attitude that what you don't know is more important than what you know.
There's a whole lot more that you don't know than what you do know.
And
he mentions
we
that
so
as well.
often don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And that's when we get in trouble. I think that's a Mark Twain quote, something about, it's not being wrong that's a problem. It's being wrong and thinking you're right. Something along those lines.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It's tough. I especially in our current, the way politics work in this country right now, it's so hard to listen to someone and admit that they shared something with you that you didn't understand, you didn't expect, you didn't know before. And because it feels like, oh, if I admit that, then I'm giving them a partial victory. And we can't afford to have any partial victories for the other side, because if we have, if they have even a partial victory, they'll take a mile. And it's like, you and I spend a lot of time with each other, talking to each other, having conversations. But, the day that you and I stop talking to any other people and stop reading books, then our conversations are going to start sounding very, very similar day after day after day after day. And the requirement, the drive to find new people to have conversations with, I mean, it goes all the way back to, trying to find another village to trade with, because they may have something you've never seen or heard of before that you need, that you don't know you need.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that. And I could also see that being a problem with couples who spend too much time together.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Where you're doing everything together and you then have so many shared experiences that you don't have any separate experiences. And, not only do you kind of stifle your own growth, but then I feel like you take some of the excitement out of the relationship, because then what do you have to share?
Yeah, you're not bringing any new ideas in. You're just ruminating over the same old ideas over and over and over again. And boy, that sounds boring.
No, thanks.
Yeah. So I was looking at some notes on a site that sort of does some commentary on Peterson, like we do, and they went through some common examples of poor listening that I wanted to go through, and you could tell me if any of these strike a chord with you, because they certainly do with me.
Yeah.
Spending your time, instead of listening, trying to jockey for status in the social hierarchy, meaning, I'm worried about my next point so that everybody around can see how smart I am. I certainly have done that.
Mm-hmm. I have too, for sure.
This sounds like your friend that you just shared. The idea of people offering monologues to enforce their viewpoint on other people without giving them the chance to respond.
100%. Exactly. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I think I've been accused of filibustering before, where somebody, said that I was, just standing there talking so that they couldn't get a word in edgewise. And it's not helpful. And so don't do it, everybody.
Right. Yeah. The irony is that then you end up completely defeating your argument, your point, because then you're coming across as so scared that you don't want the other person to even have a chance to speak, because you could then be wrong. And so you're coming across by doing something like that, by filibustering and not letting them ever talk about anything.
Right.
You're coming across as very insecure, because then you can't handle any other information, and that weakens, I feel, even if it's not the case, it gives this undertone of the fact that you're so scared that you don't have confidence in your own information, that you just kind of stifle all other information so that they don't even have a chance to speak. And, I mean, I look at that in terms of, a lot of what's been going on with social media platforms and the news, the mainstream media, in terms of just silencing other opposition, other questions, other information, where it's not even, they don't want to bring it up because they're so scared that because they know, there's a lot of holes and there's a lot of weakness in what's being presented. And I feel like when you're getting down and dirty like that, that's a problem.
Yeah. I have, I've always been a bit of a free speech absolutist, and I do continue to believe, even in tough political times, even in pandemics, the remedy for bad information is good information. It's not it's not tell people they're not allowed to say things because they're the wrong things. It's,
right.
no, let the debate happen in the public square and let people decide what they want. Now, obviously there are some complicated issues where, your behavior can impact me, my behavior can impact you. And we need cool heads who care about a positive result having those debates, not just crazy people, but the crazy people will out themselves if we give them the chance.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think, and I understand too, some people feel like people can't handle crazy people in terms of, oh my gosh, it's going to cause everybody to lose their minds because people feel like they're not going to be able to think for themselves. And I think that's a big issue too, is not having the confidence that another human being can actually make their own decisions, even if they're exposed to, information that might be a little bit crazy or information that you think might be a little bit crazy. Give humans a little bit of credit here,
Yeah. I personally have some trouble with that sometimes because, I do walk around sometimes feeling like I'm smarter than other people. I know better than them. I've done more research than they have. And so people should just listen to me. But, maybe I feel that way on a given topic, but for somebody else who's way smarter than me on another topic, I don't want them condescending to me that way.
Yeah.
So if I'm not willing to put up with,
Right.
being treated that way, that I can't understand information, I can't make my own decisions. If I don't want other people to treat me that way, then I have no right to treat other people that way either.
Yeah. So there's two different things you just kind of talked about here though, right? You're an expert in one area, but but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't make decisions in other areas, right? You can't evaluate stuff in other areas. So, just like, you've got a lot of experience in one area, somebody else could have a lot of experience in another area. And like you said, is you would feel, less than, I guess, a human or just, being, put down if you're not even allowed the chance to make your own decision.
Yeah. The thing that does bum me out about, education, at least here in the United States, that, I think is a shame, is that, a liberal arts education used to have a pretty heavy emphasis on grammar, logic, and rhetoric so that you could, learn vocabulary, you could learn how to think, and you could learn how to persuade. And it's kind of the foundation of everything else. Like if you have those skills and you're deep in grammar, logic, and rhetoric, then you have the ability to evaluate arguments and find logical fallacies and things like that, so that you won't be taken in by somebody who has, a very fancy TV set, where their TV shows filmed is all fancy and there's lots of bright lights and stuff like that. If you can say, oh, okay, that guy just tried to sell a straw man argument or a no true Scotsman on me, and I recognize it because I understand how logic works. But there is not much of that in this country, short of, philosophy majors, maybe. And that's a shame because we've lost our ability to defend our ideas to other people.
Yeah. I mean, it's a foundation. I feel that you're right, that we should really be teaching even in like elementary school, kind of, like reading and arithmetic, right? That should be another critical thinking skills, is really, and be able to properly evaluate, information and just know how to ask questions.
And that's why I think it's so important for parents to be involved in the academic lives of their kids. It's like, if you teach your kid how to think, and if you discuss what they're, doing at school around the dinner table, you don't have to worry about what the political agenda of the teacher, of their geometry class is. It doesn't matter, because your kid knows how to think. Your kid knows how to tell the difference between a good idea and a bad idea. And you don't need to lobby your congressman to pass some new law about what the teacher's allowed to say and what they're not allowed to say, because your kid knows how to think.
Yeah.
So easy for me to say.
Of course it is. Of course it is. But, I think it's a great idea, just because then you really, as part of that, I feel it helps remove attachment to ideas that you might have, and kind of sets a mindset of, this is an experiment and I'm asking questions to be like be a detective here. Right. Rather than thinking, all right, this is what I believe, and if this turns out to be wrong, this is now I'm wrong. There's something wrong with me.
Right.
I'm flawed. And it becomes, these ideas become part of your identity. And so then you cling to them, because it's like,
Right.
well, then who are you if you aren't these ideas? And if they're proven wrong, you could end up either, being destroyed mentally, emotionally, or basically just denying that they were wrong, and just go, I'll think whatever I want to think, because that's, it's just more tolerable that way. And I feel like a lot of people do that.
I tell you, for my friends that I enjoy debating politics with, they all answer one question the same way. When I say, hey, can you tell me the last significant political issue that you changed your mind on? They all have an answer. The ones who say, no, I can't really think of anything. I've been a member of this party or a member of that party since I was, in 8th grade, when my mom and dad taught me about voting, or whatever it was. It's like, no, if you adopted that plan back then and you have not been persuaded to change your mind on anything, I don't know that you and I are going to have an enjoyable conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, another one of my exes had a great question was, if I were to present evidence to show, to show that, what you are saying is not accurate, are you open to, to being, to listening to it, to being wrong about it, and before you get into this huge, back and forth and trying to change hearts and minds about stuff, are they even open to changing their mind, or open to considering new information?
Right. Yeah.
And that's not always the case. And I know I'm guilty of that, not being open to certain information.
Yeah. I think we all have that. Yeah. And, it's interesting. You ask somebody, okay, what are the topics that you consider closed for debate? And whatever their answer is, that's the religion. And you don't try to talk somebody out of their religion, because it's not going to be fun for anybody.
No.
Okay. Last two of these poor listening skills I wanted to share. Absent-mindedly sort of hoping for inspiration to pop into your head while the other person's speaking. like just kind of almost daydreaming to the point where you hope a good argument pops into your head so that you can refute what they said last time.
Oh, wow. I don't think that's happened to me.
I'm a little too obsessive when it comes to having an argument with somebody to actually just kind of, take my hands off the steering wheel and hope that something pops into my head that I could use against them. It's that I can't do it that way. And then the last one is stubbornly disregarding what is being said out of fear of changing your opinion. So when they do make a point, just ignore it, pretend like it never happened. And that's some rough stuff. So I did want to share one of my favorite exercises when it comes to arguing with someone, debating with someone. I mentioned straw manning a little bit ago, which is a logical fallacy where basically you take somebody's argument and you mischaracterize it. And for example, say someone, identified as I'm pro-choice, and then you respond to them by saying, oh, so you're saying that every baby should be murdered? That would be an example of straw manning, where you take a version of what they're saying that is easily attacked, and then you go after it because it's an easy target. Yeah. Okay. So what I enjoy watching various public intellectuals, other than just me, engage in is a process called steel manning, where instead of that, you take your opponent's position and you state it in your own words in such a way that they'll agree. They'll say, you know what, Charles, you got my position exactly right. That is exactly what I believe. And if you can both do that for each other, where you're able to state the other person's position in a way that they'll buy off on, then you can start having a serious debate and trying to find the truth in good faith.
Yeah, I think, and by doing that, you are actually fostering a form of communication, right? You are defining what you're talking about, really, right, at that point. And that's I think something that isn't easy and doesn't come natural to most people, but you have to have a common ground to start with. Otherwise the whole conversation afterwards isn't relevant, because you could be talking about two different things, two different interpretations about the same thing. And it's one in your mind and it's something else in the other person's mind. And you both could be making great arguments, but if you haven't decided that we're talking about the same thing,
then you're just talking past each other.
Right. You might as well not even be talking to anybody.
Right. Yeah. I think, and plus it shows a lot of respect to say, hey, I value you so much that I'm going to see if I can restate your argument in a way that makes it clear that I listened to you and I understood you, and I can parrot it back to you in my own words.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of effort to be able to do that successfully. And it tells the other person, like, I have a lot of respect for you.
The other thing it does, I just thought of, is it helps the other person understand that the words that they're choosing to use may be being interpreted in different ways than they intended. So they may go, oh, wait a minute, that's not what I meant at all. If you say something back to them and they're like, well, wait a minute, that's not what I meant. It kind of helps them round out their communication skills and their thoughts about the topic as well.
Right. Yeah. And again, that is a way to demonstrate your respect for somebody, and people will respond to that every time.
One of the personal development coaches that I was listening to, Brooke Castillo from the Life Coach School, had on one of her podcasts, was talking about when people have a conversation, there's actually 4 different conversations that happen. And it's when one person says something, okay, it's the words that they use when they say something. And then it's, what did they mean? Okay, right. That's another thing. And then on the other side is, what did the other person hear? What were the words that they heard? So that's another meaning. And then how do they interpret those words? What they took from it. So when there's 2 people talking, there's like 4 different channels of communication that are going on. And that's why what you're talking about, restating, is so critical, because it's so easy to kind of miss the mark, considering there's 4 different meanings and 4 different interpretations of what's going on. And when she broke it down that way, it really helped me kind of take a step back and go, wow, look at, she's right on this. Yeah. We need to be, it makes it much more valuable to me in my mind to take that time and effort to do the restating of that information.
Absolutely.
And it is not just, when in school the teacher would ask you to restate the question, and it's kind of like, oh, really?
Yeah.
But it's there's a reason. It's worth it.
Yeah, no,
it's good practice. And
if you believe that it's worth doing, then you'll do a good and honest job of doing it. You won't be trying to sneak something in there to score some points, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which is easy to do sometimes. If you're just dedicated to winning the argument, it's easy to do that. Okay, so I've got one more sort of rule or tip that I want to share, sort of as a cautionary tale, because this is something I am terrible at.
Okay.
And I'd like people to be able to learn from my mistake. I find, so let's leave sort of the realm of debates, and having fun chatting about politics with our friends, and going into full-on arguments with romantic partners.
Oh yeah, let's get there.
Arguments with romantic partners, wives, girlfriends,
they're the best.
They're not the best.
Love it.
They're the worst. And here's what happens to me. I get physically exhausted when I have those kinds of arguments. I mean, I get tired, like I want to nap, and which I can't just fall asleep in the middle of it. So what usually happens is I disengage from the person because I'm just feeling too fatigued. And here's what I wish I did instead of that.
Okay.
I wish I could say, okay, let's stop for a second. My frustration is short-circuiting my ability to reach an answer with you. So what I'm going to do right now is disengage from the argument, but not disengage from you.
What is it when you say, help me understand?
It basically means I need a break.
Sure, but then how are you not also disengaging from her?
Well, by not leaving physically is a big part. By not walking away, not going to your room and laying down.
Okay. And what do you think? I mean, what's the problem with doing that? I mean, I'm not talking about taking off and, never coming back, but why do you feel like it's important to stay in the same room or be physically near that person?
Because I believe they can
just go to another room to lie down. What's the value in that, do you think?
Because the way you do it, the way I've done it in the past has led that person to feel abandoned.
Okay.
Like, I'm washing my hands, enough's enough.
Well, I think that's a different conversation. If you said I'm washing my hands of this, it doesn't matter even if you're staying in the same room, I feel.
If you just stop talking and turn around and leave the room, Dan, that's what you're saying.
No, I'm not saying that. No. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is I need to disengage from the argument and from you for a little while to get that full break. So I'm talking from my own experience.
Okay.
I can't, if I just had a heated argument with, my partner, I need to physically leave and look at something else. And in order to more quickly clear my head and to more quickly get over, reduce the emotions and everything else like that, I know myself, and I need some space. I need some, whether it's just walking outside or another room or whatever that might be. That helps me. Now, could I get there if the other person is still next to me? Probably. Yeah. But it's going to take longer.
So what you're saying is what you're saying is the first sign of trouble, you skip town. See, that was a straw man right there. No. Okay. So it's interesting. I think you and we may have a fun little fundamental disagreement on this. So you know what that means.
All right.
Next time we get one of our professionals on, we're going to have to offer our two opposing views and have them give us some information on, the ups and downs of each one of them. I'd love to hear that conversation. I mean, really any of the three of them would be fun. I think asking maybe ask all three.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I like that because I feel like it's a real bad thing to do because it's never worked out well for me when I've done it. But you've had success with it, and that's interesting to me. Now,
here's the thing, though. I'm not saying I'm out of here. I'm not threatening with anything. I'm not saying we're done. I'm, saying I'm never coming back. It's just, I need some physical space, not just mental space. So for me to say, okay, we're not going to talk about this anymore for at least we're going to take a break from that. To me, that's the mental break I need, but I also need a physical break as well. That helps me again, taking that action and just having that space, being outside, and it's not like days. It's, it might be a few hours, whatever. And so that just helps me expedite the processing of everything in my mind.
I think I understand what you're saying. So I'm going to make this even more fun. You ready?
Okay.
So before we interview any of our experts about this, you and I are going to steel man each other's position. So we'll get together and we'll talk it out and we'll write it down, and you'll present my argument and I'll present your argument.
Fantastic.
And then we'll ask them for feedback.
I like it. This is going to be great practice.
I think so too. I think it's going to be fun.
It's a great idea. I like it.
Yeah. I think it'll be a fun way to go. All right. So I covered the points that I wanted to discuss. You got anything you want to go over?
A minor thing that, that I kind of picked up, and I briefly talked about this before, but, Peterson is really an advocate of humans being social and interacting with other humans. And he kind of makes the point of why it's so important in this chapter. I'm going to read a little blurb out of it, and it's not going to be 2 minutes like you edited it out the other day. So I promise it's only one paragraph. So
I trust you.
All right. Much of what we consider healthy mental function, this is on page 250. Much of what we consider healthy mental function is the result of our ability to use the reactions of others to keep our complex selves functional. We outsource the problem of our sanity. This is why it's the fundamental responsibility of parents to render their children socially acceptable. If a person's behavior is such that other people can tolerate him, then all he has to do is place himself in a social context. Then people will indicate by being interested in or bored by what he says, or laughing or not laughing at his jokes like we do for you, or teasing or ridiculing like you do for everybody else,
right?
or even by lifting an eyebrow, whether his actions and statements are what they should be. Everyone is always broadcasting to everyone else their desire to encounter the ideal. We punish and reward each other precisely to the degree that each of us behaves in keeping with what that desire, except of course, when we're looking for trouble. So I feel that's a great way of saying, hey, it's important to have those social connections so you can get
Yes.
that feedback, to know what, to realize that more than, I guess, if you have more than one brain looking at something, that tends to be a little bit better in terms of the amount of information that you're getting. It's not just, you're not just isolating to yourself. And if you aren't able to get along with people, and that comes from, and he talks about in one of the previous chapters, is don't let your kids do anything that makes you hate them.
Right.
If they are no longer able to be socially accepted and have friends and get that feedback, that becomes a very lonely process. And then I realized, wow, he's right in terms of a lot of these mass murderers and stuff like that, with these kids that grow up and shoot up schools and stuff.
Yeah.
They're isolated, and it's because they're not getting, part of it is they're not getting feedback or proper feedback because they're not being accepted by people. They don't have that crowd around them to help guide them a little bit.
Yeah, I've got a quick response to this that I think you'll enjoy. As you know, one of our favorite things to do on the Mindfully Masculine podcast is compare people to dogs.
Yes,
so
that's
one thing I've noticed. Have you ever been at a dog park and some super anxious, misbehaved dog comes in the dog park, and for a minute it'll act kind of crazy, but then the other dogs gather around it and regulate its behavior almost instantly.
Yeah, the pack mentality, right?
Yes,
it's right, the pack influence, right? Yes, if you ever watch,
they respond
Cesar Millan,
yes,
would train the crazy dogs by bringing the pack.
Exactly,
and they would it's amazing.
Yeah, and so it's for social animals like humans and dogs. It's important to, other people, in the case of humans, other people can help us regulate our emotions and our mental states, because we're able to reflect what we're feeling, in their eyes, basically, and watch their reactions to us and figure out okay, am I behaving in compliance with whatever social contract I'm currently under, or am I being weird right now?
Yeah.
And if the answer is I'm being weird, that's a recipe for fewer connections and less success.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. Great dog analogy.
Thank you. I know we love those.
Yeah, I could go chase a stick right now. So excited.
All right, sir. Anything else for us today?
No, I think that's it. I think we're good with Rule 9. And
I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it as well. Rule 10 coming up. Be precise in your speech.
Oof, that's an important one, especially the more you put yourself out there to interact with people. You got to be careful what you say. The more people are listening, the more important it is. Yeah, no,
and I know you've said that to me a few times, is, hey, let's be precise in what we're talking about. Yeah. I didn't realize you were pulling it from the book, so that's good. I like it.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
That's how good of a plagiarist I am.
So smooth.
Thank you.
All right, sir. Well, I will. We'll let you get back to your wonderful vacation there. And
thank you. We've got a few hours left. I'm going to use them up.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk to you later this week.
All right. Sounds good, Dan. Take care.
All right. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for spending time with us on the Mindfully Masculine podcast. If you liked the episode, or you think it would be useful for someone else, please leave us a review and join the Mindfully Masculine group on Facebook. Remember, fellas, don't act masculine, be masculine.